honest to God, can't believe I had to DNF so many fucking books. Outrageous. Out-fucking-rageous, bro. Ugh. Like, ugh. Hey guys, welcome back to my salty December wrap-up. And when I say salty, I am fucking salty. I'm salty because so many DNFs. So many DNFs. Oh my god. I was looking forward to damn near every book on this list, and I was nearly let down by all of them. I think I had 13 books on my TBR for the month of December, and I read 6 of them. Seven. I think I read 7 of them. And I think only 4 of those were good. We will get into it. We'll get into it. Because, ciao. Alright, let's get into this bullshit. The first book I read in the month of December was All He Wants for Christmas by, what's her name? Sorry. Karen Booth. All He Wants for Christmas by Karen Booth. It's a Harlequin novel. It's a pregnancy romance. Here for it. Pregnancy billionaire romance. It's the 3rd in a series, but you weren't really missing anything if you start off with this one, because it just honestly focuses on the romance between this woman who owns a third of her dead husband's company and ends up falling in love with his estranged brother. It was okay. It was just boring. It was okay. The sexy times in it were kind of, but, it was okay. I might unhaul it because I don't ever foresee myself rereading it. And, I honestly forget most of what even happened in it because it was just kind of lackluster, but it was just okay. So I gave it a C. Just okay. The second book I read this month is One Christmas Wish by Brenda Jackson. Brenda Jackson is a very prolific romance writer, and she's known for having some really great sexy times in her book. I wouldn't know because I only got 100 pages into this book and I DNF'd. Well, not so DNF. It's TBD. It's TBD. I just, it was so goddamn boring. It was so fucking boring. The book is about this guy who is from this very extremely wealthy, rich family. By the way, it's an African-American romance, so the majority of the characters are African-American, if not all. But he's from this very rich, wealthy family that, has this mansion off the coast, the Gulf of Mexico near Louisiana. About an hour of a water taxi ride to New Orleans. And everything takes place on this, very small town, kind of fictional island in the Gulf Coast near New Orleans, which is, sold. That's what got me. In addition to it being a holiday romance. But he gets out of jail, and he's trying to start his life over. He meets this woman who runs a soup cafe, and they fall in love. And that's very cutesy and very sweet. I was so fucking bored. And the dialogue was really weird. It sounded very robotic. It didn't sound how people talk. People don't normally talk like this. It was just, I don't know, there was something about it. I couldn't power through it. I was just kind of like, man, I don't care. I didn't hate it. I was just like, in that moment, I was just kind of like, okay, there are other romances and thrillers on my TBR for this month that I'm more excited for. So trying to push myself through this book just to finish it, when there are other books I feel like reading, I was just kind of like, okay, now. So that's why it's not necessarily DNF so much as it is TBD. Okay, let me start off by saying this. I am not a kink shamer. If anything, I am the opposite. Of all the kinks on this planet, of all the odd, sexual things you could be into and get you off and enjoy. There's probably about only 10 things, or at least 10 that I'm aware of, on the list that I honestly cannot do in fiction or in real life. Like, don't want it, don't want nothing to do with it, and you should probably go to jail. But one of those things on my list, or one of the things, rather, excuse me, that wasn't on my list but might be now because of this book is kid play. I did not know that kid play was going to be in it. I was like, absolutely the fuck not. And this might make my list. I might have to, it might be number 11 on my list of kinks of no ma'am, never ever, no thank you, go to directly to jail. Because there is, I understand completely that people who engage in kid play and what they explain it as to be and how it's not this, and how it's rooted in the attraction of someone taking care of you. And I get that. I totally do. However, it's still a little odd to read in a book. And it was very odd reading in a book a grown-ass man wanting to be treated like a child by another grown-ass man in a very sexual way. It felt very pedophilic. It was, I'm just going to say it was strange. It was very strange to read a grown man wanting chicken fingers and milk and his jams and like, no. No. And there is a strong difference between daddy kink and kid play. Very wide gapping difference between that. Daddy kink, oh yeah, here for it. Which is what I thought this book was. Kid play, which this book actually is, absolutely not. No thank you. I don't even know what to do with the book. I don't even want to, I want to unhaul it, but I always unhaul my books to the public library, and I don't want anyone at the public library to know that, hey, that chick owned that book and tried to give it to us. And I also don't want to trash it, because trashing a book feels sacrilege. But I also don't want anyone to ever know I owned this book. I don't know what to do with it. I think I'm honestly just going to have to unhaul it to the library and hope to God no one remembers my face when I drop all my unhauled books off. The next book I read is Holly Jolly Diwali by Sonia Lally. Say that 3 times fast. It was okay. It was okay. I had a feeling it was going to be pretty mid. I didn't really think it was going to be fantastic and blow my socks off. You know, I just thought it was going to be a nice, cute little contemporary romance, and it was. But I didn't really, there was, flame factor was a 1. We did get a sexy time, sort of, kinda, and it was fade to black, so, you know, I wasn't here for that shit. Especially when we spent all this time with all this fucking sexual tension and build up between our heroine and our hero. The hero seemed a little too good to be true. The heroine was a mess. She was all over the place. And I was more interested in her familial dynamics than I was in her romantic relationship with our hero. Like, I honestly would have loved it if this book was more like women's fiction and spent more time with the dynamic between her and her sister, which was far more fascinating and interesting to me. But it was just overall kind of like, I can't even remember half the stuff that happened in it, because I read it, was like, oh, okay, that was cute, and then I put it out of my mind. The next book I read is The Warmest December by Bernice L. McFadden. It was fucking incredible. A. This book gets a fucking A from me. It was so good. It takes place during Christmas, and it's about this woman who is visiting her her father, who is dying in a hospital, and in between her visiting him, we get flashbacks of her childhood with him, and he was the nastiest, most abusive and violent and vile alcoholic, narcissistic, controlling alcoholic. She's just waiting for him to die. She wants to see it with her own eyes. He made her life and her brothers and her mother's so fucking miserable. And to see him dying in this hospital, you know, there's this part of her that wants him, just this is waiting for him to go and perish so she feels like she could start her life. And, you know, also there's this kind of gleeful revenge as well. Like, he was just this horrible, mean, angry, despicable person to her as a child, and she just wants to sit and watch him rot. I am not a fan of forgiveness. I think it is absolutely okay to live in your anger and your pain and your hurt, but I also understand that for a lot of people they can't do that. A lot of people have to move past it, and in order to move through their trauma and move past their trauma, they have to forgive their abuser in some way, inadvertently forgiving themselves for being abused, and in order to you know, break out of the pain that they're living in currently, because it's not getting them anywhere. And that's what's happening with our female protagonist. She's stalled in her life, and she's miserable, and all of that is his fault. It's his fault that she and her mother are in horrible financial strife. It's his fault that her brother is away. That was another thing or at least I wasn't clear on. Her brother, it never really states what happened to him, so you don't know if he's dead or in jail or what have you. Oh wait, no. It did. I'm sorry, I lied. The book did. It did tell you what happened to her brother, because the book spends a huge chunk of it, like 2/3 of it, you know, telling you that something happened to her brother and it's her father's fault, but not telling exactly what it is. But the last third of the book, I do remember now, it does tell you what happened to him. But yeah, he has been the bane of her entire family's existence for so long, and she hasn't been able to move past her anger and her pain, and because of that she's taking on, and she's been numbing herself with alcohol in the same way he does. Although she's not violent and aggressive, she is withdrawn, apathetic, and, you know, angry a lot of the time, and she's trying to work through that, and she realizes by the end of the book that the only way that she's going to get through it is, first off, is she has to stop seeing him as a monster. She has to see him as a person who was in his own hell, his own pain, you know, hurt people, and how he got there, and how if she wants to break generational trauma, generational curses, then she has to not only see him as a person that was hurt and took his hurt out on her mother, and her brother in the worst possible ways, but that also his pain and trauma needs to be acknowledged as well. And once she realizes that, she realizes she can break the generational curse in her family and not be that. So it's just all about, you know, really trying to not pass down trauma, abuse, and pain. It was tragic and sad and beautiful and everything that I love in a Bernice L. McFadden story, and it said volumes. And from what I understand, it's semi-autobiographical. It's a little bit about her. In the beginning of the book, there's a picture of her with her father. It was an incredibly sad book to read in December, when I wanted to just read romances and thrillers, but still, it helped save my month of just continually DNFing and TBD and books that, weren't satisfying to me. But I'm really glad that I picked this book up and read it. It was great. It was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. A. The next book I read was Love at Icicle Cafe by Denise and Wheatley, and after 100 pages I DNF'd it. It's very Hallmark, which, I knew and I was looking forward to and I wanted to read, but its plot was like a little convoluted, and its plot was a little convoluted because there were so many holes in it. Okay, so the story is about this woman who grew up in Germany, black woman who grew up in Germany with her parents, and they owned a winter-themed cafe that's become such a staple of this small little town in Germany. And every year it's the highlight of their giant Christmas festival. And her parents are retiring, and they co-own my cat. And they co-own the cafe with another black couple that lives out there who have a son who is the same age as her. They grew up together, and in high school they had like a little romance with each other before she moved back to the States. Well, anyway, both sets of parents want to sell the cafe off and just enjoy their retirement and move back to the States. The one set of parents are Hero's parents. He has been living in Germany and just handling the business of the cafe ever since that both of their sets of parents moved back to the States. So there's this whole plot of him trying to get this buyer in to help him buy the cafe from his parents, and or convince them to keep it, and that it's just such a staple of this small town where it was just stupid, because I was just kind of like, if he's already running the cafe and his parents are the co-owners and his parents' best friends are the other co-owners, why, and they all know that he's been running this cafe, he's doing a fantastic job of it, why don't they sell it to him? Why are we going through this whole big weird business plot thing when they could just sell him the cafe? And he wants to stay in Germany, he wants to stay there and run the cafe. Why didn't they just sell it to him? Why didn't they just give it to him? And then they just retire in the States. Like, I didn't understand what was this whole third party person in the middle. That was just ridiculous to me. And then our heroine, she works at this law firm where she handles contracts conveniently. And she hates it, and it's so boring, but she also wants to be made partner, which is weird. And so she's fighting for this spot against this other dude who's a lot more available and a lot more eager for the position that she is. And then she has the nerve to be upset when, the firm starts choosing him to do things over her. And it's like, girl, you're not even in the country. Because that was another thing. Her parents, it's the last Christmas festival that they want to be involved in, but they're not necessarily there because her dad got hurt, and now they have to stay in the States, and now they can't go back to Germany to go for the festival, so they asked her to go, and she's like, I can't, I'm trying to get, be made partner, and they're like, please, 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 and she's like, fine, I'll go. Like, to me, right then and there, she should just been like, no, I'm sorry, like, y'all don't even want anything to do with this business, and so-and-so's been running it in Germany for God knows how long, I don't know why y'all need me to go there. And on top of that, I need to be here for my job. I'm trying to make partner at this law firm. But no, she does it. She goes there, and that's how she meets up with the hero. And then they start falling in love. And conveniently, she's also a really good baker. And so, of course, I just saw every beat that this was hitting, where this was going. I was annoyed at all the plot holes, and I was annoyed because I could see where we were going with this. It just got predictable and boring, and I was just kind of like, no. When I realized that I was done with this, when I was just kind of like, oh, I can't wait to get through this book. That's when I know I need to DNF a book, and so I did. The next book I read was Bellwether Rhapsody by Kate Reculia, and it was fantastic. It starts with this really horrific murder that takes place during the 80s, and then we jump forward to the late 90s, where this musical competition is held every year, in addition to a concert that they give as well at this secluded hotel. And a murder happens, and we are following different characters' perspectives as this thing continues on. As they try and solve the murder, as they get snowed in and no one's allowed to go anywhere. We get a lot of backstory about who these people are, why they're here. It was just really interesting. It was a really interesting place to set a murder mystery amongst, a bunch of high schoolers who were basically just in band. And the most talented prodigy there ends up murdered. And the rest of the story is trying to figure out who did it, if she actually really was murdered, because as soon as her body is discovered, it's suddenly gone. But also no one can find her. It's like a closed circuit mystery. You're just trying to figure out which one of these characters did it, if the murder actually took place, and once the murder is revealed, what happens next within this whole drama. So I thought it was fantastic. I absolutely loved the characters. The writing was really brilliant. It was fantastic. I love this book. It reminded me a lot of Samantha Downing's For Your Own Good, which I also liked a lot. But just like that book, I enjoyed everything but the ending. I didn't hate the ending of either of these books. I was just kind of, that's how I felt at the end. I was just kind of like, that's how we're wrapping it up? Okay, I guess I'll accept this. But, the whole rest of the book is so incredible that the ending, I'm just willing to be like, okay, I guess this is the one we got. So, yeah, I honestly give Bellwether Rhapsody probably about B+. Yeah, about a B+. I really enjoyed my time reading it. And I loved Kate Rakulia's style of writing. It's really good. So I'm going to have to scour her bibliography and see what else she's got on there, and pick up, another book of hers, because I really enjoyed her style of writing, and I really vibed with it well, and I like the way she tells the story. So I was here for it. But yeah, Bellwether Rhapsody gets a B+ from me. The next book I read was 'Twas the Night After Christmas by Sabrina Jeffries. I TBD'd it. I was really, really looking forward to this romance, but I got 100 pages in, and the heroine was getting on my nerves. I absolutely love the hero. I liked their blossoming romance and, the sexual tension between them, but the heroine, she got on my nerves. From the very beginning, she got on my nerves because I didn't like how she and the hero were introduced. I felt like what she did was really wrong and really a violation of privacy and really disrespectful. So that just kind of stuck with me throughout the book. And she's supposed to be this blue stocking, this very incredibly smart, intelligent woman, but I just felt like she did a lot of dumb shit. So I was just, I didn't care for her. So I was just kind of like, okay, I don't hate this. I'm not going to DNF and I'm not going to unhaul it. So let me just put it down for now. So I just TBD'd it. The next book I read is The Midwinter Mail Order Bride by Katie Wilde. I surprisingly love this book. I am really surprised. I surprisingly really enjoyed it. I just thought it was going to be a nice little erotic romance, alpha male Viking romance kind of thing. And it is. So she sent to him to be his mail order bride, which she was kind of excited about. But then once she realized that there was issues going on in her own kingdom, she wanted to go back and help, and she didn't think that he would allow her, so she was preparing to murder him if he wasn't going to allow her. But he immediately, love at first sight, instant love, falls in love with her, so wants to do anything she wants to do. So she's just like, I want to go back home to check on my kingdom and my mother and my family and all our servants or whatever, to make sure they're okay, because I think that they're all under a magic spell that's harming them and yada yada yada. So he's just like, okay, I'll take you back. And this is the last book within a series, and you can read it as a standalone. You're not really missing much, and because they give you a bit of backstory. But he used to be a slave, and then he led a slave revolt, and then he murdered the king in his kingdom and ended up taking... Hold on, my cat wants to get out. All right, Lucy. Okay, where was I? Oh, okay. So yeah, he was a slave, and he ended up leading a slave revolt, and his slave revolt took over the kingdom. He murdered the king, and that's how he ended up being the king, which I love and think is fascinating. Very Spartacus. And I will say one issue I have with the book was that there is a lot of graphic violence in this book. But anyway, the violence in it was probably the only thing I kind of had an issue with. But the thing that really surprised me about the book and why I ended up liking it a lot was because he and the hero and the heroine end up having these very nuanced conversations, these very nuanced philosophical and political conversations about monarchies and socialism and classism, and like magic is used as a allegory for capitalism in their conversations. It's just, and I was not expecting that in a alpha male Viking, erotic Christmas novel. There was the beginnings of a second novel in that novel. Like, I finished that story and I was like, wait a minute, then what's the rest of these pages? And it's the beginning of a second novel, and I fucking hate that. I told you guys, I fucking hate that. I can't stand that. Like, so basically I just read a novella. So it wasn't a full novel, it was just a novella, which is fine, but I just didn't like the fact that most of the book was taken up, like the completely other half of the book was taken up by this other story that I did not give a fuck about, and I didn't read it because I did not give a fuck about it. The next book I read was The Matzo Ball by G. Meltzer. Let me just tell you flat out, I DNF'd this book. I was looking forward to this book so much, and I fucking DNF'd it about, I want to say 150, maybe 175 pages in. It was fucking boring, and I was annoyed. Every character was fucking annoying. I did not like anyone. Oh, no, I am lying. I liked our hero. And I did not understand why the book solely just couldn't have been about him. If it was solely about him and his story, I felt like the book would have been 10 times better. Way more fascinating. So the story is about this woman who, she has chronic fatigue syndrome, and it hinders a lot of what she can and cannot do. And so her prospects for a job are very limited, but she has found employment and gainful employment in New York, of all places, as a romance writer, and she writes specifically Christmas-themed romance books. Fantastic. Here's what the supposed problem is. She's Jewish. And I was like, oh, okay. Still don't get the conflict. But she's raised by this very Orthodox rabbi, and her mother is very Orthodox. The family she grew up in is very Orthodox Jewish. And she just feels like it would bring so much shame to her family if it turns out that they found out she was writing Christmas novels for a living, which I just did not buy at all whatsoever. I didn't even but again, I'm not a Jewish person, so maybe that's my ignorance of it. Maybe I didn't understand that maybe they would see it as such a betrayal to her engaging in this very Christian pagan holiday. But I also at the same time was just like, this is 21st century, and I really don't think they care. I think your parents are probably just more happy that you have steady income. And it's not like she wanted to convert to Christianity. She was very much proud of her Jewish heritage and being a Jewish person and being raised as a Jewish person. So I just didn't understand why she was just trying to keep this such a secret, why she was trying to make it such a big fucking deal. And then what happens is her publishers feel like her Christmas novels are becoming more and more lackluster, and they want to try something new, and they know that she's Jewish, so they asked her to write a Jewish holiday romance, and she just feels it's like such a betrayal by her agent and her publisher, and she's so upset by it. But they're like, do it or we'll drop you. So she's like, fine. And so she's like, man, I need to go out and research Hanukkah to find out. And I'm like, why are you researching Hanukkah to find out exactly what this holiday is about and how to celebrate it, when you spent all these pages talking about how you went to Jewish summer camp, which is where she met our hero, and going to Hebrew school? Like, this is all knowledge she should fucking have. So her acting like it's just so foreign to her was weird as well. And all these Jewish jokes she kept making, they weren't offensive, but they were just corny. I was just like, I don't really care. And then of course she had the obligatory gay black best friend, which was annoying. it was just kind of like, and then the chemistry between her and our hero was just non-existent. But our hero was the person that was the most interesting to me, because his whole backstory was that his mother is French, his father is American. His mother moved here to America to be with his father, and they had him, and they decided to raise him as Jewish. And so the early beginnings of his childhood, up until like he was about 12 years old, he was raised in a very Jewish environment. But then his mother got sick, and his father, being unable to handle that, started overworking. And then in his overworking, started having affairs with women. So he just pretty much left his mom to die alone with their son, and, left her. And then, left her to start a whole new life with this other woman and this other family, because he just couldn't cope with her dying and didn't know how to respond to it. And so our hero grew up very angry, not at his father, but he grew up very angry at his father, but unfortunately taking it out on his mother, who was dying and causing a lot of problems for her, but being a really troubled kid. His mom not wanting to, have health care provided to her in America, because fuck no, she was not going to pay millions of dollars to stay alive in America, where she'd go to France and it's free. So she hauled him back to France with her in order to, live out the rest of her days there, a lot more comfortably than she would in America. So he's also angry at her about that. He's angry that his father just straight up abandoned them, in his own disturbing reaction to his wife dying and getting sick. And our hero's grandmother, who's Jewish, his dad's mother, lives in New York, that he was very close to, so he was very upset about leaving her as well. And his mother, not being Jewish but Catholic, didn't keep up the tradition of raising him in that faith, so he lost a lot of that. So when he comes back to New York and wants to regain all that, and by throwing this huge matzo ball and, reclaiming his Jewish heritage, like, all that's fucking fascinating. All that is the story I would have fucking loved to have read, and him meeting some nice Jewish girl who helps him along the way and helps him grow and stuff like that. But no, that's not the story we got. We got this boring ass story about this goddamn girl who writes Christmas romance books and is too afraid to tell her parents about it. Like, I was annoyed. I hated it, so I fucking DNF'd it. It's not even TBD, I fucking DNF'd it. The next book I read was Snow and Rose by Emily Winfield Martin. It is a children's fantasy book, and it was adorable. I loved it. I can't wait till someday possibly reading it to my kids. It's about these two girls, Snow and Rose. Snow, because she has, this stark white chalk hair and very pale skin, and Rose, who has very dark hair and these very ruby red rose lips. They are girls who used to be a part of the gentry, the peerage. They used to be, I think their father was like a duke or an earl or something. And long story short, he disappeared one day, unfortunately, into the woods and never returned. And their mother, not being able to keep up the household without, their father's income, they had to move into this small, tiny cottage in the woods. And Snow is still very resentful about that whole thing. But Rose is really obsessed with, wanting to know if their father was alive and trying to find him. And so the whole book is about them discovering that they're part of these, their home is in the smack dab in the middle of these really enchanted woods that might give them the answers that they're searching for about, their father, as they come across these misadventures one after the other. And they meet these really fascinating, interesting people who also live out in the woods. And I just thought it was really great. It was really adorable. It was really sweet. And the drawings throughout it were really cute and adorable. So I loved it. I thought it was great. And yeah, I am definitely going to hold on to this. And at some point, hopefully in the future, I get to read it to my kids. The last book I read this month was A Princess for Christmas. And no. So boring. Okay, so I technically DNF'd this book, but I'm going to count it still as a read because I got way far into it than I normally would for a book that I DNF'd. I probably have about 50 or so pages left, and I just was like, Jessica, you don't care about this. What are you doing? And I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. And I put it down. The premise itself I liked a lot. It was about this princess who hails a cab while she's in New York giving a speech at the UN. She ends up liking the cab driver so much that she's just like, hey, while the whole time I'm here in New York doing this and this business, would you mind driving me around for a fee? And so he's just like, yeah, sure. And they end up getting to know each other, liking each other, and falling in love. Where the book lost me is that should have been the entire story. That should have been the entire story. That's what the whole thing should have been about, is like, you know, this entire week where this cab driver and this princess fall in love with each other. But no, that is probably not even the very beginning, probably like a fourth of the story, and the rest of it takes place in her fake foreign country. I just felt like there was too much going on with that. Like, the story wasn't tight. And I would have liked it more if we stuck to her being this royal bitch. Like, I would have loved that. I would have loved if she was this snotty royal princess who is hanging out in New York. And, okay, she's hanging out in New York. And let's say she's trying to get a limo service or cab service or Uber or something like that. But she has such a low rating because she's such a bitch. So she can't get anybody. And then she catches this off-duty taxi driver and persuades him that, like, hey, I'll give you X amount of dollars if you drive me around for a week. And he's just like, yeah, sure, whatever, not knowing that she's a total bitch. And then, you know, they start out with a little hate to love, where he's just like, yeah, I can totally see why there's not a single limo service or black car service out in New York who wants to deal with you because you're an asshole. And then he kicks her out the cab and, like, in the middle of nowhere in New York, so she has nowhere idea where she is and where the fuck she's going. And so, but after a while, he gets worried about her and he comes back for her and checks on her. She apologizes. They start getting along and, you know, start falling in love. Like, see, isn't that more interesting? Isn't that better? I think that's better. I still tried to power through it because I was just like, I can't DNF another book this month. I just can't. And it turns out that I can. It turns out that I can. I am very much a person that believes that you need to be enjoying the thing you're watching or reading, and if you're not, then exit out of it. If you don't like it, just go. You are not obligated to finish it. And so yeah, that's why I put it down. But if I had to give this a grade, C minus. So anyway, those are the books I read and did not fucking read this month. Yeah, it was really disappointing. It was probably more disappointing than October and August, the two other months that were disappointing. Eileen was on my list this month, and the Big Book of Christmas Murder Mysteries. I did not get a chance to get to those because as I went through all these books, I was frustrated and angry and did not want to get on I didn't want to start anything new and ended up hating that too. And plus, like, Christmas came up, and I was just kind of like, you know what? We're done for the month. We're done. So, yeah, so I did not read those two. But I'm going to hold on to them and at some point get to them. Ugh. Anyway, hope you guys had a lovely Christmas. Hope you had a great time, stuffed your face. I hope your Christmas ham was juicy, and I hope that, you know, your sweet potato pie was sweet. I hope your holiday was everything that you hoped it to be. I hope you gave back as much as you took in. And I hope that you got to see those you love and care about. And I hope that you're excited about making it to the next year. And I hope that if this year was terrible for you, that, you know, 2022 turns out all around. I really, truly do. I mean, it is rough out there right now. We're coming up on 3 years of this fucking pandemic. So, and, you know, it's hitting a lot of people hard. And I totally understand. I'm one of the very, very fortunate people that have been lucked out a lot through this whole thing. And I am eternally grateful and happy about that. So I try my best to acknowledge how bad it is for other people and what we can do to help those that it's been really bad for. Thanks for joining me on this wrap up. Again, I hope you guys had a great great holidays, and I will see you in January 2022. Bye. Have a good night.